For those who may not know, about a year ago, I had put out a survey about indie animation, asking people to pose their questions to me, as someone who's running a successful indie animated series, if anyone else is working on one, if they had questions. So it's taken me a really long time to sort of go over all the responses to everything, and I'm just now getting to it. So if you've been waiting for a while, I apologize, but I'm not going to really be doing this by script. I'm just going to be kind of going question by question. So let's get started. So one of the first questions I got was, do you have any advice on running a successful Kickstarter campaign for an animated indie project? So the unfortunate answer to that is I actually would not recommend using Kickstarter. Me personally, I honestly just think we got lucky in terms of, the amount of people that we were able to reach with it. I really wouldn't recommend Kickstarter for securing funding for your project. I'd use something like Indiegogo that's more specifically targeted towards indie projects. The issue with Kickstarter is, and honestly, I don't even care if they hear this and I get backlash for it. It's a fact. They place emphasis specifically on projects that they know are going to make them money because they take a percentage of your profits at the end. So this is things like products, like inventions, things that people are making that make millions or billions of dollars. An indie show run by one person is not very attractive to them because there's a very, very slim chance that it's going to make them a lot of money. So, and you can see that, if you go to Kickstarter's homepage, they highlight these products or, animated projects that are made by like Disney or Marvel or these companies that they know will succeed, not, this little thing like Wildcard that they have no idea what it is and have no faith in. I got lucky. I was able to meet my Kickstarter goal, but that's not the case for everyone. I've seen a lot of animated series on Kickstarter that just kind of fizzle out because they don't get the funding that they need. So I would definitely recommend more something like Indiegogo. If you need to do Kickstarter for the brand recognition, I would just recommend setting your goal a little bit lower than you need because it's going to be really difficult to make that amount. But if you want to use Kickstarter and just creating a campaign in general, just make sure that you have enough content. You're going to want to showcase animations, character designs, concept art, all the things that will make people want to support your series. Next, we have, do all indie pilots usually run for about 20 minutes? Can someone make one that's longer depending on the story? So the number one thing to keep in mind with this is that it's going to be more money the longer that it is, unless you're the one person who is an animator working on this and you don't have to pay yourself. It's very expensive. To be completely honest with you, the amount that we raised on Kickstarter was lower than we actually needed for the pilot. I've just been kind of putting in my own money to help supplement that. So the wildcard pilot right now, as it's written, is about 10 to 15 minutes. In reality, that's going to be probably cut down more to around 10 minutes or even 8 minutes, just because it's a lot. It's a lot of money, and animation is very expensive. So I would keep that in mind when writing your story. Less is usually better. You want to leave people wondering what comes next for the series. Have them answer, questions down the line. So make sure that you factor that in when you're kind of thinking about runtime for your pilot. But I would say, 15 to 20 minutes is usually pretty standard. But for indie specifically, you might see something lower, around 10 minutes, just due to cost. How does the voice recording process for actors usually go? Do all the actors record in one place? And how would this work in the middle of a pandemic? The pandemic has actually made things way easier in terms of voice recording. I don't have the funding to kind of rent out a studio and, fly all my voice actors out to do recording in a professional studio. So they all do the recording in their own houses or apartments or, wherever else they live, in their own home-based studios. So it's becoming more of a norm, especially during the pandemic, that voice actors have access to high-quality equipment or their own home studios. I don't want to say that that's a necessity because obviously I know it's very expensive and all voice actors are coming from sort of different areas. So I would say when you're casting for your project, just make sure at minimum your voice actors have access to high quality equipment because that makes the difference. As you can see with Wildcard, we've had some instances where the audio quality has differed based on the character, so you can kind of tell that not all of these actors were recording in the same space. But for the most part, as long as you have high quality equipment for your voice actors and a sound team that's really good and can kind of adjust audio accordingly, everything should sound pretty normal. Any advice when it comes to marketing for indie animated projects across social media? To be honest with you, money. I started out on Instagram and I got really lucky in that I established a following really early on, and the same thing happened on TikTok when I posted a video and it went viral, and then it like went viral again, and we ended up getting like 50,000 followers or something like that. But for other platforms like Twitter and YouTube, I've actually done paid advertisements to help boost our numbers a little bit, because it's hard when you're first starting out. It's really hard to get your content in front of people, in front of an audience. So a good way of doing that is budgeting for a few paid ads to kind of grow out your audience, or just do sort of old school marketing of, continuing to post, make a content schedule, make sure that you're posting at least a couple times a week, or if you can, every day. I was doing that for a while during the Kickstarter. Not gonna lie, it burnt me out really quickly having to post every single day for like 2 months straight, but it's a good way to boost engagement. And especially on Instagram or TikTok, make sure that you're using the right hashtags, like animation hashtags, so that your content can be found by a wider audience. When it comes to recruiting artists to form a crew, how does the process usually go? So for me, I found a character designer I really liked on Instagram. I reached out, she agreed to do some character designs for me. And then when I started posting content, I actually naturally got people sending me DMs asking if I needed artists on the show. And that's sort of how I built those relationships. And then through having those relationships, they introduced me to people they went to school with or other people they've known in the art community. And we just sort of built out a team from there. I'd say, try to identify the style that you're going for really early on, and try to make some connections of artists who sort of match that style if you're not an artist yourself, and then start from there. Any advice when it comes to making merchandise and rewards for Kickstarter? That's a really good question. I mean, I touched on Kickstarter before, but it's the same for Indiegogo. Just think about things that people like, or even that you would like. What would you want to buy, from something, or donate to get for something? Pins, tote bags, plushies. I mean, plushies are a little bit more expensive, but stickers, things that you can make relatively cheaply and then provide to the community easily, and things that are really attractive to people and that people like and will want to buy. Any advice when it comes to funds and budgeting for an indie pilot? Again, I'm unfortunately not the authority on this, because I have overspent in some scenarios. I've had to put in a lot of my personal money in order to fund particular projects, so I can't really speak too much to this. I would just say set a fundraising goal that's going to at least allow you to accomplish something. In our case, our initial fundraising goal helped me not only create a animated intro sequence for Wildcard, but also get through the entirety of pre-production for the pilot. So really kind of map that out and what it looks like for you personally, and make sure that it's an attainable goal, especially if you're doing a fundraiser, because you're asking people to give you money. So you have to make sure it's realistic. You don't want to ask for $1 million when you're probably not going to get that. Is there an average cost for most indie 2D animated pilots, or does it depend on the project? So this is kind of related to that last question. It really does depend on the team that you're using. I mean, higher quality animation is going to be much more expensive than something that, you could probably cut costs on. For me, I mean, I'm not an authority. I set our Kickstarter goal at 35,000 because that's what I thought was attainable. I would say, I mean, it can be upwards of $100,000 for a single episode, depending how long it is, and depending how many characters there are, and the things that you want to actually convey in the animation. So I would say keep that in mind. Try to keep the cost down as much as you can by being flexible about the runtime of your episode. Maybe you wanted it to be 20 minutes, but you cut it down to 10 to save on cost. Maybe you wanted to put 7 different characters in the pilot, but you can only fit in 3 for cost. And then think about, the cost of the animation team and the voice actors that you're working with. By no means am I saying, find the cheapest options available. I think you still want high quality work. And always bear in mind that you have to pay the people who are working on your project fairly unless you are the animator and you're doing it yourself. So definitely factor that into your decision making as well. We got many more questions on the survey. I think over 100 basically, because this was a year ago at this point. And I can't answer all of them, but maybe I'll do a part 2 at some point if people are interested. But I hope this sort of gives you some basic information about indie animation and starting a project from scratch. There's no 100% foolproof process for this. I'm still learning as I go about it. But if you have any questions about anything that I touched upon in the video or didn't touch upon, feel free to just sound off in the comments and I will answer those as I can.